Perfect. So we already saw like the basics of CSS, and now let's talk really quickly about CSS preprocessors. So I already mentioned a little bit of that, but basically these are different systems that add syntactic sugar to CSS. And some of the most common ones are SAS, which is one of the most popular ones, Less, Stylus. I have personally used Stylus and Less in my own projects. And they used to be like very famous in the sense that it will help you write more complex CSS, um, keeping just some basic rules. The interesting thing that has been happening though is that um, like the CSS has been catching up with many of these things, as I mentioned with the variables. And then there are also, and by the way, this was also written by Claude, that I asked it to take this basic slide that I have done on my own, and then to go and check what was the usage of each one of those elements on the Stack Overflow web development developer survey, I think it's what's called. And like it came out with this thing that I think it's useful. So for instance, in this case, Byte is one of the things that have been used a lot, and it helps on processing many of these things. So apart from that, there are also some CSS frameworks. Bootstrap is the one that we are going to use in the class. Make sure to use version 5. So please write that down. And then there are others like Foundation and Bulma and Tailwind. It's one that is getting a lot of attention right now. So you might be wanting to take a look at that. I kind of prefer the semantic meaning of Bootstrap, whereas in Tailwind, instead of you going and saying this is going to be a card, you use more of like the features that it has. But it's getting like a lot of attention, so you definitely should take a look at that. For the class, again, we are going to be using Bootstrap. And then the other thing that it's very important to keep in mind is that in modern development, it is very common to use frameworks like React or Vue or Svelte. We are going to be using React in the class. And in those ones, actually, many of these frameworks are actually replaced with more like CSS in JavaScript solution, which is kind of counterintuitive in the sense that we were wanting to separate jobs, and with frameworks like React, you actually start collapsing some of those, everything revolving around the JavaScript, but you have to still keep things very organized. So finally, this is something else that Claude added in there by looking at the Stack Overflow survey. So I recommend you taking a look at this. This is the version from 2024 of the survey. We think the version for 2025 might be already ready. And then you can go and see in here, like all of the different elements and try to see what are the different languages that have been used. I even created some visualizations for that. And then some of the key elements of this is the traditional less CSS frameworks are less prominent due to these new things that have been implemented, and that there is a lot of people just falling back into the standard HTML and CSS instead of using like all of those different layers, especially because every time you add a new library or something like that, it's a new point of failure, and it's making your application more heavy, okay? Which we want to keep very lightweight so it actually will run way faster, okay? So this is very interesting. I actually haven't seen what like the new uh, uh, survey says about this, but probably a lot of people are going to be doing that now. In any case, that is for preprocessors.